2 years ago, I packed my car, old Chevette, 84. Drove it till the engine smoked, hitched a ride through San Antone. Got a job, tending bar, let a senorita break my heart. I wanna sink my feet into some Illinois clay, walk along the cornfield in the cool of the day, get a dog and chase a rat.
Welcome, everybody. Another edition of the Common Ground podcast. Welcome to the Common Ground community. I'm pretty excited about today's guest. We have Jim Rothermich, based out of Iowa, and he is the land talker, all things land. And excited to have you, Jim. Appreciate your time. Just going to have a general discussion and get your opinion on some trends and maybe some crystal ball work. But excited to have you. And why don't you start off and give everybody listening a little bit of background, where you're from, what you do, how long you've been doing it, and go from there.
Oh, well, thank you for having me today, Chris, and look forward to visiting with you today and talk about land. Like I said, my name is Jim Rothermich, and I live in Des Moines, West Des Moines, and our Iowa appraisal office is in Des Moines, just right downtown. So I work for Iowa Appraisal, and I'm the ag appraisal person in our shop, and we just added one here last year. So there's 2 ag appraisers in our shop, and the rest are commercial appraisers. There's 3 commercial appraisers in our shop. So Iowa Appraisal is owned by BCC Advisors, and they are business valuators, mergers and acquisitions, and litigation support companies. So a lot of times, if they have business valuations that deal with real estate, we'll do the appraisals on the real estate and send that appraisal to them, and they'll put the values for business valuation. So I am originally from Central Missouri. I am from a little town called Voss, Missouri, and that is just 30 miles east of Columbia and 100 miles west of St. Louis, just right off of I-70. And my dad was a crop and livestock farmer. So my brother now operates the farm. And so I went to the University of Missouri and got a degree in ag business and graduated there in 1988. And at that time, graduating from the ag school was not a good thing. And the reason why is CRP had just come out, and just thousands of acres in our area went into CRP. And they also had another government program called PIC, and that stood for payment in kind. And so I can remember going measuring off the worst parts of the field and planting the best parts of the field. And then Dad got like a PIC certificate and went and cashed that in. I don't know how it all worked, but it did. But so anyway, there was just a handful of acres that was growing crops in our area. And the rest was encumbered by government programs. So there wasn't a lot of opportunities for young people. And so at that time, the only people that were hiring on campus there at Mizzou was the large hog integrators out in North Carolina. And so we had hogs on our farm. And I thought, well, there's not a lot going on there where we was at. So I was like, why don't you go out and try and get in this industrial hog production? And they were predicting, this is the way things are going to be in the next 20, 30 years. And they were right. So I moved out to North Carolina, was in hog production, and worked for Smithfield Foods. And so then in early 90s, Morgan Stanley dropped about $600 million in northern Missouri to put in 50,000 sows in a packing plant called Premium Standard Farms, which is now owned by Smithfield Foods. So I moved back to Missouri and worked for them at Princeton, Missouri. And then I kind of got burned out of the hog business and was talking to one of my friends there at Princeton, Missouri, who's a banker. And he was telling me, you ought to try to get into appraisal business because we have a hard time finding people to do appraisals. And they said, your business, your ag degree would work. And as he talked to me, I thought the top of my head was going to blow off because I thought that's what I need to do. So about 2006, I started taking courses for appraisal, and in 2009, I got my certification. In 2010, I replaced a retiring appraiser for Farmers National Company, and that got me in Des Moines. And then 2018, I got my MAI designation. 2019, I got my ARA designation, and 2020, I got my ALC designation. So I've been in business.
2010, so 14 years you've been doing land appraisals.
Yeah, well, actually, 15 years. 15 where I had my certification. So 3 years before that, probably 18 years probably would be more accurate.
So you're in Des Moines, you're doing land appraisals. When did this land talker come about?
Well, at the time, to be in the ag appraisal business, it's a hard business to get into because you've got to take 300 hours of education, specialized education, and then you've got to have like 3,000 hours of supervised education. And that's hard to do. And then once you get through that process, then you got to have business. And so,
did you say 303,000?
Yeah, 300 hours of education and 3,000 hours of supervised experience. And that's hard to find a supervisor that would be willing to do that. So I've always had to generate my own business. So when social media come around like Twitter, I kind of realized, maybe this is an opportunity for me to get my name out and try to generate more business. And so, because nobody hands you business as an appraiser, you got to go out and find it. And a lot of the people that need appraisals already have a relationship established with an appraiser. So it's hard to get in the biz. So on Twitter had come out there in the early 2010s. And I kind of looked at that as an opportunity, and you had to have a Twitter handle. I said, I'll do the land talker and I'll post auction results. So I started doing that, and it has really gotten very popular. And I do a lot on Facebook and LinkedIn, but that's how that comes around.
So is the land talker just social media, or do you publish a report, like a monthly report that you send
Yep.
to subscribers?
So I have a monthly newsletter. It's called Land Talk Monthly. It's a free subscription. And if you'd like to subscribe to that, all you have to do to go is www.iowaappraisal.com, and you'll be able to subscribe. And so that, everything revolves around that, Land Talk Monthly. And then I have a blog, Land Talk Weekly, and that all goes out. It's, I watch all the auctions in Iowa. And every month I have those results go out in a newsletter with a little bit of narrative. And then every week I publish the results of those auctions in a week. And that's posted out on Twitter and LinkedIn. And then as the auctions occur in a day, I'll post those results as soon as I know as soon as I find out what they sold for, I'll post those results on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is my data is real time. There's hardly any time lag with my data.
Gotcha. But you're only covering Iowa results.
Yeah, right now we're covering Iowa, but I'm doing a partnership with Land Hero, and we're getting ready to gear up, and we're going to try to do something in Illinois and Minnesota here, not too far in the distant future, and try to do kind of do the same thing in those states.
Sure. So what's your take on the current environment? So you've been doing this since 2010, 2009. You've witnessed a major bull run in land values.
No, that's for sure. I tell you what, Chris, COVID, I think that the way we need to look at the market now is, there was a market pre-COVID and a market post-COVID, and they're kind of different. And, I remember when COVID hit there in the spring of 2020, I thought, the ethanol plants were shutting down, and packing plants were shutting down. And I just thought, man, this is going to be a train wreck like we never seen. And I remember those auctions occurring at that time, and I was like, wow, that really wasn't that bad of a sale. And I was like, it seems like we're getting through this okay. And then the fall come around and corn prices started going up. And it was in October, I started gathering those auction results. And I was like, holy cow, this market's moving. This market is really moving. And so from October to the end of the year, we've seen some really good sales. And I was like, wow, that it's just really took off. And then we got into, 2021, and that thing was just on fire. And, got some sales, just, we were just setting county records just week after week after week. And then we got into 2022, and it kept climbing. It peaked around May of 2022. And that was, I think, the most aggressive market conditions we've ever seen. And I don't know if we'll ever see that again.
Well, so just a dumb question. Why do you think that was? Do you think it was just all the money injected into the market, or do you think it was a flight to safety in stable assets, or a combination of the both?
Combination of all. I think there was so much money plugged into the system that there's two things farmers buy when they have money, and that's dirt and iron. And they were going after both. But I think some of those CPAP, those CPAP programs with the COVID and the China, all that money that was plugged in the system, I think it was just going right to dirt and equipment. And I think that was the biggest thing right there.
So what's the highest price per acre you've seen in Iowa? Okay,
that was in November of 2022. And that was $30,000 an acre in Sioux County. And
30 grand.
30 grand an acre. Yep. Now I thought that would be the top for a while, but Missouri kicked out a $34,800 an acre sale not too long ago. So
is that that's for straight tillable? There's no wind farm or anything?
Yeah, no wind, no solar, no development potential, just bought to raise corn and soybeans. That's right. Yep. Yeah. So, and then we had one earlier last month at $29,600 an acre in Sioux County again. And yesterday there was one that sold for $26,500 an acre. So we've got a mixed market right now where we've got these really good prices. But as I look at these auction results, there's been 5 no sales this month so far.
So it's a mixed bag.
It's a mixed bag, very mixed bag. And so I look back to a year ago, March of 2023, there were 3 no sales. So we've already got 5. And this week's going to be a busy week of auctions. So I'd say we're probably going to have 1 or 2 more, if not, at least.
So the obvious question is, how are these people making sense of this math, especially with commodity prices where they're at, if they're still getting $26K an acre?
I agree. Yeah, sure. Well, there's still a lot of money sitting out here in the countryside. You got to figure, I had an auction. There's a runner-up bidder that didn't get anything bought. So
yeah,
there's still a lot of those people around in Northwest Iowa. Those people are just equity rich. And whenever something comes up for sale, and there's a lot of Dutch people up there. They're very conservative, except when farmland comes up for sale, and those dollars tend to fly out of their pockets to buy farmland. So we just still got some of that hangover from all that cash that was, generated past 3 years. We just went through the 3 best years farmer ever had in their life, and some of them didn't spend it all. They kept it and was waiting for that right farm to come up for sale. So
some did, some didn't.
Right. So we're still seeing some of that carry over, but the trend is the market is trending downward.
Trending downward.
Yeah. So the overall market is trending downward.
I've got a couple of questions for you, and it's kind of intertwined with you know what we do here at Common Ground.
Absolutely.
So
I love what you guys do.
Well, and it was born out of frustration on my part, just having a farm and not knowing what it should rent for. And, I felt ignorant and there was no open, transparent marketplace. And I just thought, well, if they auction off farmland, why wouldn't they auction off leases? And, that's how this whole thing got kicked off. But, we've learned a lot doing this. So a couple of questions for you as a, ag appraiser. How do you take in like rental rates? If you're looking at a farm and it's currently rented for $225 an acre, and they say, "Hey, Jim, we need an appraisal on this." Do you base it off that $225 an acre that it's rented for?
Oh,
Or-
no, it's under market. That's an under market rent.
So you're adjusting your appraisal of the property based off of your expertise and what it should rent for.
Right, right.
So what
Right.
kind of
If
data
it
are
was
you
exposed to the market, it would be a lot higher, just the same way.
Yeah.
as
So
the
what
farm would
what is
sell.
that data that you're looking at then I mean, is it soil data? Is it tiling data? Like you're just looking at that saying, hey, this piece of ground in this area of Iowa, yeah, it's currently rented at 225, but realistically, if it was put on, common ground, it would rent for 400.
Right. Yep.
How are you deriving that?
All right. So what I have done, what I found out is those rents that are privately negotiated are typically under market. What I've also found out is what the universities put out is typically under market.
Yep.
So out of frustration, much like you, I started to keep track of cash rent auctions. And so there's not a lot of them, but I feel there's enough to derive a pattern on that. So what my data indicates, and you guys send me your data too. So I use that because those are market rents.
Yeah.
So the range runs from, mid $4s to the mid $5 per CSR2 point. And I think that, the average is around 5. So that's kind of what I use is $5 per CSR2 point. So if you have an 80 CSR2 farm, the market rent would be around $400 an acre.
Well, this is probably a dumb question. You know exactly what we do here, but have you ever run a cash rent estimate?
I have not done that. I have not done that.
Well, that's going to make your job so much easier. You just select the parcel and it tells you what it'll rent for.
Well, I never thought of that, but I'll have to try that. Absolutely.
There's appraisers in other states that are utilizing the cash rent tool for just that reason, to say, our algorithm is based off a myriad of factors, and then it's also constantly learning off of these auction results. So it's pretty darn accurate. And I would say we give a range, but that high range, I would say on average, we probably exceed that high range on the cash rent estimate probably 90% of the time by 10 to 15%. Because we're fairly conservative. There's some, possibilities of unknowns on the farm, like is it tiled? That's going to increase the value. But maybe on a different call, we can walk you through how to do a cash rent.
Yeah, right.
Then you're going to be appraising farmland sitting on a beach somewhere. So.
Well, I tell you what, the problem with the cash rent is there's not enough transparency.
Yeah.
And thank God for you guys, you're putting some into it. And but most farms are under rented in Iowa.
Absolutely. And we see it here in Illinois. Obviously, we're not, too far from you, but, definitely an issue. And that's when I went to the, University of Illinois Ag Extension. I looked at the USDA data. I was just like, this is garbage. And then I found out it was self-reported by the farmers. And I'm like, well, of course it's suppressed.
Yeah.
I've always said that, our data is real time, and, we get some grief from the farming community that we're raising rent, but we're not. That would be like the farming community saying that an auctioneer is raising land values, and it's just not the case. But what I'm curious about is rental rates are always lagging. Is that because they're privately negotiated? You mentioned that.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's just because the landowner is basically none the wiser, and there's no good resource for them out there, correct?
There's none. There's none. The best resource they have is maybe the university data. And that's kind of, in my newsletter, I started putting in cash rent data in there because, and the reason why is because I got so many phone calls from people that own land from each coast, East Coast, West Coast, all over the country. And they were asking me, do you have something like what you do for land prices, auction results? And I said, I don't, but let me see what I can find out. So I started doing research, and Iowa prisons, farms, they own land, and some airports own land, and they put those bids out there, and it's public data. So I started gathering that data up. There were some people that was having cash rent auctions, and then you guys had come around, and so I started getting a good amount of data, more than that than there was out there, market data, and I started just putting it in there so people can look at it. And I tell you what, you talk about people love that information. They just they think it's the greatest. And so I tell you what, Chris, listening to some of those widows and those families talk about the rent they were getting paid on farms they owned in Iowa, we're talking like, $200 an acre when it should have been $500 an acre. It was horror stories. And,
it's tragic. And I've said it all along. That's part of what drives me every day is, you've got that little old lady. I had one in particular that I'll never forget. We doubled her rent and she was in tears. She's like, "You've changed my life."
Yeah.
And, a lot of them, that's their income. And, it's very beneficial across the entire spectrum, because what I tell the farming community, if a farmer says, "Well, you're just raising rental values." Well, you as an appraiser know that if the rental rate increases, the value of that property increases.
Absolutely.
So if I'm a farmer and I got 100 acres and I'm farming it, and then the farm next door is 100 acres and it's rented out for $200 an acre, let's just say that thing sells for $7,500 an acre or whatever. And all of a sudden, that's a comp for my ground right next door. So it's 7,500. But if I take that rental rate from 200 to 400, that inherently should double as a cap rate goes to say, well, now that ground's 15,000 an acre. Well, now that's my new comp for my farm next door.
Absolutely.
So the rising tide lifts all boats. And when you're suppressing rental rates, you're suppressing actual intrinsic value of land. And that's what I find just fascinating is when rental rates increase, it's an automatic boost to your balance sheet from an equity standpoint as a comp goes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, some of those phone calls I got was through, 2021 to 2023. And it was kind of, all of them was kind of the same story. My renter said he would raise the rent this year, but he said his input costs went up and said he can't do it. And then I'm seeing all these posts you're putting out there, all these record land prices. And I'm like, well, how can these guys be paying all this money for land when they're not making any money?
Yeah.
So it's like, well, there's a different story.
It's not adding up.
Right. And that was interesting how many people called and said the same story. And those people, in my opinion, deserve to get market value because some of those family are paying, care center bills with that money.
Oh, absolutely.
And so they deserve it, market rent, as much as, any farmer has right to get, if he's selling a farm, to get top dollar or selling calves or whatever to get top dollar. It's their right to do it.
Absolutely.
Free capitalistic system. The only advantage they have is there's lack of transparency. And we're starting to change that. We're changing that.
Yeah. And I personally, I'm biased, but I see our growth internally, and I see the future of, the next 5 to 10 years with land trading hands from one generation to the next. We're going to see the largest transference of land. And farms are consolidating. So there's going to be less farmers. And all this ground is going to absentee landowners where, it's getting split up between two brothers and two sisters, and all four of them live in four different states. And, when they look at the rental rate, they might say, well, let's just sell the farm and get
Right.
But then there's tax consequences. And, we talk to people all the time and say, hey, yeah, you inherited this piece of ground that's only kicking off $200, but it should be kicking off $450. So let's put it on CommonGround, put it on an open, transparent marketplace, get the rental rate up to where it should be. And then if you want to sell it in a couple years, at least you're getting market rent and it's going to be worth twice as much. So, I see it as a prime opportunity. And, we kind of pioneered the space, but, I'm on LinkedIn and social media, and we're starting to see, other small brokers in Iowa doing cash rental auctions. So I see it being the future of land leasing.
Yeah. That next generation of landowners, I don't think are going to put up with that, that low under market rent. And as technology gets better, that transparency is getting better, and they're waking up.
Yeah,
for sure, waking up. So, but it's an issue. I am surprised how many people let their tenants get by with such under market rent, but it's out there, and it's just lack of transparency. That's all there is to it. Yeah,
and we had a gal that said, hey, I really like my farmer. Yeah, he's not paying market rate, but I really like him. And, I said, well, would you cut him a check for $40,000 at Christmas? Do you like him that much? Well, no. I said, well, that's what you're doing.
Yep. No, that's right. That's right.
And what I find really fascinating and kind of a pat on the back with what we're doing is high bid doesn't win. So we still put the power with the landowner because it's their asset, it's their decision. And I would say 80+% of the time, high bid doesn't win for whatever reason. Sometimes we have a landowner that says, hey, I'll take the guy $20 less because he's a young kid and I want to give a younger guy a start and maybe he's going to be on it a long time. Whatever the reason is, we still empower the landowner to make that decision. Maybe the top bidder doesn't have a good reputation and doesn't have a good solvency track record of paying his rent. So, we leave that up to the landowner. And oftentimes we see the actual tenant farmer retain rights to farm, but they know that they're paying market rent now. And the landowner can go to their tenant farmer and say, hey, the lease is up for renewal. We're going to put it on CommonGround and we're going to get it out there in the open, transparent marketplace. Please, I want you to stay on the farm, throw in a bid if you want to continue to farm it. Well, a lot of times that happens where they say, okay, I want to stay on the farm. They might not be high bid, but they're close. So it gives a lot of flexibility to the landowner through the cash rent instrument tool to kind of establish a value and then post it and market it to every area farmer. Because you all know 20 years ago, farming was hyper localized. Farmers would go 10, 15, 20 miles.
Right.
Now farmers are going 60, 75 miles with the big iron that you alluded to. They have to be farming more acres and they can travel much further and they're growing their operations in a line. So, opening it up to farmers 60, 70 miles away, it's going to increase your bidding pool as well.
Right. Yeah, the demand for farm ground is very strong to rent. And looking at some of the cash rent auctions that come in this year, I was surprised how high they were. It seemed like there was no adjustment for corn, in the low fours, or it even dipped down into $3 per bushel. So yeah, some of those cash rents, I would like to see, what those farmers use for their costs, input costs, because they must have definitely advantage of economies of scale or something they have to for what they bid at.
Well, I did my research, before starting the company, and it started with my farm. And I sat down with 4 different farmers that I went to high school with. And I said, well, what would you pay for rent here? And it was a wide array of answers.
Right.
And it's like, well, when you dig deeper, it's like, well, why can you only pay 250, but this guy can pay 350? And it's economies of scale. And
Right.
it's economies of scale. It's their overhead structure, and it's a risk appetite. Some of the guys are willing to, nearly break even on the ground just as a pure overhead play to keep their machines running and cover some overhead. So, leave it up to that individual farming operation to make that decision for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I do know one thing, this next generation of landowners, that the way those farms are farmed is a big deal to them. I remember talking to somebody and they inherited a farm, and they was like, by God, that farm is going to be no-tilled. And that's it. It doesn't matter. Either that tenant does no-till,
yeah,
or we're going to find one that will. And I was like, and this was a fairly decent sized farm. And I thought, my gosh, if it's going no-till the first time, it's something maybe you want to go into gradually, but it was just like, it's going to be no-tilled.
Yeah.
And using cover crops. And I was like, wow, that's a drastic change from, what it was going from, so.
Well, it's a different mindset, and, profitability is top of mind, but also sustainability and
That's right.
Environmental impact plays a role with this generation. And, we allow, custom contracts where you can put that right in there to say, hey, this farm is going to be no-till, or cover crops need to be planted. It's the landowner's decision ultimately. And we're all about empowering the landowner and, helping give farmers an opportunity to farm ground they never otherwise would have heard about.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I see that just being more and more of that going into the future. I really do.
Well, I'm with you. I'm still seeing strong land prices, and I follow you and I watch your results, and I'm still blown away by them. But I'm sure people are saying the same thing about watching our results, and we're still getting really strong rental numbers, and people are saying, well, he's not going to make money at that. And it's like, well, that's not for us to discern, how he's profitable or not. But we're still seeing strong numbers and strong demand as you're seeing as well.
I got a call from a guy in Illinois that got my newsletter. I think it was a banker over there. And he said he got my newsletter and that I think it was 2 months ago, but you guys had sent me a lot of Illinois, the results. And he said, where are you getting that data? I said, the guys at CommonGround sent it to me. And he was like, is it accurate? I said, well, yeah, it's 100% accurate. It was out on the open market. I said, you could go on the internet and find it.
Yep.
And he's like, oh, we're way under rent. Some of my customers are way under rent. They're way under. And I just thought that was kind of interesting that somebody called me from Illinois questioning me about that.
Yeah.
It was so much higher than what he was used to seeing. So,
no, it's definitely getting a lot of attention, and obviously I enjoy it. Love seeing happy farmers and happy landowners, and it's a marketplace that's been needed for a long time. But love the fact that we're pioneering the industry and working with guys like you to bring transparency and like I said, a rising tide is lifting all ships at this point. So,
yeah, I remember one time you guys got a $600 an acre cash rent. And
$620.
Yeah,
it wasn't even really good soil. It was kind of a flyer. Where I mean, obviously, we're just we're an auction platform, so there was a loser right below that didn't get it.
Right.
So it didn't go from 400 to 620 without somebody else in that process. But we typically don't see that. That was
oh, absolutely.
That was an insane auction, but somebody wanted that piece of ground bad enough, and they were moving their operation that direction. So, but no, we typically stay on par with good A-class soils, bringing that 500, 510, 515. We've done some in Iowa that brought over 500. But I really encourage you to go on to the site and make your life a lot easier. And in about 3 minutes, learn how to use that cash rent estimate tool. And I think you'll find it's pretty darn accurate.
Well, on social media, when I post those big cash rent auction results, that's by far, I get more followers and more shares and impressions than land auction results.
Yeah, and it's just because it's something new. And we have a lot of farmers that register for the auctions that never bid, but they just want to see how many bidders there are, what the action is, and what the results are to kind of know what is the market rent. So they definitely get a lot of eyeballs, and I only seeing that increase in the future. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, most people are glad to see it, but there's some negative stuff that comes through there, and just laugh it off and move on. It's just a market. You can't. To me, you can't get mad at the facts. I tell people,
Exactly.
if you don't like the facts, don't look at my stuff, because that's all it is. So.
Well, I'm glad we're in the same boat, and I'm glad we're working together and publishing a little bit of transparency out there. And appreciate your time and anything you want to add here.
Oh, I just, there's a time lag. There has been a time lag with land auction results or land prices and cash rent, and we're changing that. And the market's asking for it because it's very popular. And this next generation of landowners, that's going to be important for those farms to be generating as much income as they can, or they won't own it, they'll sell it.
Well, didn't the taxes on farmland go up like 30% in Iowa?
Yeah, I'm appraising farm now. The taxes are $40 an acre. I thought that's outrageous.
Well, but it should all move together. If land values are increasing and you're getting these high auction results, the taxes are going to reflect that.
Yep.
So why is your rental rate not going up incrementally or proportionately? Because as a landowner, if your taxes go up 30%, you need to generate about 30% more in revenue to cover that.
Right.
Just to keep even.
Right. And, there's people's cash rent that hasn't changed for years. And, the seed corn companies will say, they can get yields up 1.5% every year, or 1.5 bushels per year. Mm-hmm. So if you went 5 years without a rent increase, well, that farmer is, 7.5 bushels is getting more, bushels per acre every year.
Absolutely. And
so,
it's a combination, though, of, we've got GMO seeds that are producing more bushel, just to what you spoke to. We've got more efficient equipment that is generating higher yields. It's not dropping as much on the ground. So you've got all these pluses year over year, and it's not really being translated into an increase in rental rate. And, we encourage everybody that comes and gets a cash rent estimate, like, hey, this isn't set it and forget it. Like, you need to be doing this on an annual basis, because we adjust our cash rent estimate based off of market conditions and yields and all sorts of things. So you might come today and do your cash rent estimate on your farm and it's $425 an acre. You might do it 6 months from now. It might be $440 or $410. And we're following the market and getting more dynamic every single day. But it's not a set it and forget it. This is, if you're a landowner and you want to be in the know, you should be running cash rent estimates on a regular basis, at least yearly, to know where the market stands.
Yep. As technology gets better, those costs per bushel come down. As those yields go up, the cost per bushel goes down. So people need to be aware of that. And
well,
it's drastically.
I always say something is worth what somebody's willing to pay. So,
yep.
We're just flushing that out here at CommonGround. So I know we're up against the clock here, but going to have you back on, definitely drill down a little bit more. And Jim, I greatly appreciate your time. Let everybody know where they can go subscribe for free to the Land Talker.
Yep. So just go to www.iowaappraisal.com, sign up for my newsletter. It's a free subscription, goes out first business day of the month via email. It's got all the land auctions in Iowa, the results, and whatever cash rent data I pick up. It's in there in that too. And I have some narrative in there talking about what's going on in the marketplace. And so another venue we're starting up with Stephen Brock's is called Land Hero, and it is a venue to where you can buy sale data that I use for my appraisals, and it's there's subscriptions there that you can purchase. So
nice. I know Stephen. Yeah. Good guy.
Yep. So we're working together, and he's providing a way for people there that can buy subscription to have access to my sales.
Great. Well, Jim, greatly appreciative of your time as always. And everyone out there listening, appreciate it. And don't forget, go to Facebook, join the Common Ground community, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you.
Free